Welcome to this first tutorial video for Data Meets Design. In general, we're going to have two types of content. One is going to be tutorials that focus strictly on how to make something without really considering in detail the design elements. The other is going to be lectures where we consider design elements in detail. Things like how to choose color, how to choose markers, aspect ratio, how to think about axes, and so on. This is just a tutorial video. We're going to have a look at how to work up data in Excel. Excel for us in this course is going to be the workhorse of how we manipulate data before we plot it. Later on we'll learn how to do this in Python as well, but for now we're going to be working with Excel. Of course, the very first thing for us to do is to find data, and I think where we can do that is at the most recent census. We'll talk a little bit more about how to obtain data later on in the course. But for now, let's just head over to the census site for the US government. Here's the web page, and we can see when we're greeted that there's a lot of information present on this web page. I think for us, what we'll do is we'll just consider browsing by topic instead of exploring by data. Under browse by topic, this is educational, so let's look at education. Under there, we can see something about attainment. You're all here trying to earn a degree, so let's see how that compares with the rest of the population in the US. We're going to make our own visualization, so let's not look at this right now. Instead, let's go ahead and just get tables of data, which is what we're interested in. We want to know the educational attainment in the United States in 2020. And then, of course, we also have tables where we can break this down by race, sex, and so on. Let's just get all the data. If I go ahead and click on this, it'll download a file. I've already done so and opened it up. And this is what it looks like. We have several columns of data. I think we're going to be interested in everybody who has graduated high school. And then let's see what people that have graduated high school go on to do, because you've all graduated high school at this point, so let's see what your peers are up to. For that reason, I think we can look at 18 years and over as the row of interest, because most of you are over 18 years. We're not interested in the first several columns. We don't need the total. None, that means no degrees, we're not interested in. We're not interested in people who are in grade school, just people who have graduated and beyond. And so we could use this data here, but I think it's going to be easier for us to make a new table that gives us the information that we want. And so we want to again know about what degrees people have earned post high school. So let's just enter that, degrees post high school. You can see that this is longer than the cell here. And so one way that we could make this large enough for us to see is to click here. So if we go to what I have as column T, if I want to make it wider, I can move my cursor until it changes from this down arrow to sort of the arrow that points left and right, and then I can click and drag to be the size that I want, and that makes this column longer. Something else I could do, for instance, if it was back to kind of where it was, is get that same left and right arrow and just double click, and it will automatically resize the column such that it can fit all of the text that we put in. Then we can think about what we're interested in. Well, if I look here at the columns, I have high school graduate and some college, no degree. So these would both be entries where people have graduated high school, but they have not gone on to earn a degree. And so degrees post high school, let's say none. That's the same as some college, no degree. Then we have associate's degrees in both occupational and academic. Occupational might mean an associate's degree in something like plumbing or being an electrician, and then academic is something that is not along those occupational lines. I don't think we need to distinguish between those two, and so we can just say both of those are associate's degrees. Then we have bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and professional degree and doctoral degree. And a professional degree would be something like being a doctor of medicine or veterinary medicine or being a lawyer. And so I say we can lump maybe these two together. They're both essentially terminal degrees, meaning they're the last degree that you earn for your profession. And so we have bachelor's, we have master's, and then we could say either terminal degree or we could say professional / PhD. All right, then what we want to do is come up with numbers to go with these. And one thing that happened here is that this is justified differently than here. These are left justified. This cell is right justified. And I can solve that by being in the home section of this ribbon up at the top and just saying left justified, a little bit like if we were working in Word. And that will solve that problem. Something else you'll have noticed is I'm using the arrow keys to navigate around. And then in the bottom right of this window, you're going to see the key presses that I'm making show up. And so that's something that you can use to help follow along if you can't quite see what's happening. Something else that might be worth doing is this text is a little small, probably doesn't have to be quite so small. I can change all the text by saying Control A or Apple A if you're a Mac, and I'm using a Mac, so you'll see the Apple key appear in the key presses. But if you're using Windows, you should use Control instead. We've selected everything. I can make the font a little bit bigger. That might make it a little nicer for you to read, something like 14. I also don't really like Arial for reasons that will go in to this course. I've installed a separate font that I really like called Hack, and we'll use that here. That's made things too big, so I'll just double click on the T to make it bigger again. Something happened here where it's made this column too tall, and if you don't like the way that looks, you can again find where you have double arrows and click and drag up, and that can also resize it. We're going to have 3 columns that go across the top. We're going to look at the absolute numbers of people that have earned these degrees, and so I will say, how about counts? That's, or if we want to be a little bit more personal, we can call that people. We want to know the fraction of people that have earned these. And then just for ease of reading, let's use percentage, even though these are relatively easy to interconvert. And so we have fraction and percentage. Now what we're going to do is we're simply going to keep track of all of this. And so none, we have the some college, no degree here. I could type this in. I could say 44,109. That was it. And now I have this. You can see when I type that in, there's a bunch of like what you would call hashtags. I might call pound signs, or somebody older than me would call an octothorpe. This is not an error because if I click on this cell, I can also look up here where this FX is, and you'll see the number that I typed in is there, 44,109. And what this actually means is that the number's not fitting in here, and so we can just double click to resize, and now I can see that. And part of the reason that it wasn't fitting is because we had all these decimal places here. We're counting people, we're never going to have decimal places, and so one way to get rid of these decimal places is, again, up in this ribbon you should have a thing that says number, and you can see this arrow that goes right and left with the decimal place. If I click here, then it's not changing anything for us. Here you can see it's making it have fewer decimal places. So let's just have no decimal places. That makes sense to me. The associate's degree here, now I have 2 problems. I need to add these 2 numbers together, and then I need to have that be here. And so I could do the math, use a calculator and type it out, but Excel will do the math for me. And so I can use Excel much like a calculator. And the way that I tell it I want to have it calculate something is I start a cell with the equals sign. Equals tells it we're going to type in a formula of some sort, and we'll see several examples of this. And so what I could say is I want to take this cell for associate degrees that's occupational and add to it this cell, which is associate's degree that's academic. And you can see here it's telling me that this cell is going to be equal to what's in cell L8 and cell M8. And we're using this a little bit like Battleship or something where we have column M, row 8, column L, row 8. It's also color coordinated, which is nice, so I can see I'm adding the blue to the red and the blue to the red shaded. If I hit equals, I'll get the sum of that. We have these decimal places again. We'll come back and fix it with everything in just a moment. Bachelor's. Bachelor's is just this number. I have several options now. I can just type in what this number is. I could say this cell is just simply equal to this number that I'm interested in here and hit return. But another way would be to use the copy paste. And so instead of saying equals to, if I just want the contents of one cell, I can hold down Apple C, or if you're on a PC, Control C, and then I can go say Control paste, and that will give me the number. You'll notice it was all these octothorpes again, and I have a number, and that's just simply because there were too many digits here, and that's why it's showing us that. So if I expand it, we get the numbers, and you can see that they agree. The last is the professional PhD, and so we'll use the same trick here. Something else I can do is, instead of typing in that I want to add something together, I can also use a command where I name what we want something to do. So if I type in sum, that's the name of a function that's going to add up the things that I give it. So I'll say sum, and then I'll say I would like to sum these two. If I drag and highlight them, it's going to add up everything that's highlighted together. And so here I have P8 to Q8. So it's telling me I want to add up all the numbers I find from P8 to Q8, which in this case is just 2 cells. And then I hit enter. Now we have all these numbers that I'm interested in. Something that can be useful to do sometimes is to make sure that the totals make sense. And so let's also just add another row here that says total. And now you can see where the sum comes in handy. So I say sum parentheses, and you'll also notice when I type a formula and hit parentheses after a command, it gives me, so that's a nice way to access and understand what these functions are doing. But now I just want to add up these here. So I'm going to just click and drag and hit return. And then I have 157290, and hopefully that's the same as the number of people that graduated high school, because they either went on to get degrees or they didn't. And so this is interesting. They're not quite the same. Just to make sure that you can see that they're different, let me go ahead and make this a little bit easier to read. When we start having long numbers, it can be a little hard to read. We can reformat this number many different ways, and we'll talk about scientific notation in another video. But because all of this here is not in scientific notation, it's maybe easiest to compare. But also you'll see there are these like commas where we have breaks at like the thousandths place. And the way to add that in is to go here below number again and just click on comma style. And now we can see that this says it's 157,290. We don't need those decimal places. We also don't need these two. I can highlight both and then get rid of them here as well. They're not quite aligned correctly. We can fix that if we want as well. And then we can compare 157,290. I guess we can also make all of these comma as well. Why is this different from this? This total is totaling up some college, no degree, associate's degree, bachelor's degree, bachelor's degree. All of these people here received a high school diploma. And so what we forgot is that the none also includes the people who obtained a high school diploma but didn't even go on to college. So this none should then actually be, I'm going to click up in the formula area, equals this plus the high school degree here. So now we have 227,489, and that should also be the sum of all of these across here, which I could double check if I really wanted to and say, let's double check and make sure these two numbers are equal to each other. They are. Now we've actually counted for everyone. Then we can see what happens to our student body as they have graduated and go on. I think these numbers are fine, but I think it's a little bit easier for us to think about the proportion of people that go on to attain an education beyond high school. And so one way to do that would be to take the portion of people that have done one of these categories and divide by the total number of people. And now we know how to do this, right? I say, here's the number of people who did not get a degree after college or after high school, and I divide by the total number of people that there are. And here it's 0.5, roughly half. We can have more precision shown if we want by just clicking on this number to show more decimal places. So we're going to need to type the same formula in over and over again, but one thing I can do instead is use our copy paste again. I get to divide by error, and let's look at why. What I started with here is that I had U11 divided by U16. If I click in here, it color codes everything again. If I go to the next cell that I copy and pasted and I click here, you can see what happens is it's trying to divide U12 by something below it. So what happened was it took the references that were present here and it moved all of them down one. But really, I just wanted it to move 1, right? I only needed it to move what was in the numerator. The denominator needs to stay the same. And the way to do that in Excel is to put a $ in front of what you don't want to change. So this is telling it that if I move the cell around, the U and the 11 can change, and this U can change, but the 16 will always stay the same. And so let's see what happens if I say copy paste. Now, when I click in here, you can see that it has moved down what's in the numerator, but not what's in the denominator. All right, I can go copy paste, copy paste, copy paste all the way down. I have a fraction of 1 out of the total. That makes sense. So that's good. Let's do percentage. Well, percentage is really fraction, but sometimes people find it easier to understand when you think about percentage. There is a percentage button here that would just convert things to percentage, but the number really wouldn't change. It just displays it slightly different. So we're not going to use that. Instead, we'll use a formula. And it's really the fraction times 100 that gets us to percent. And so now this is 50%. We don't need all this precision, so let's get rid of a lot of these. And then I could say copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. But something else that's going to save you time is that you see this little square at the bottom here. And if I hover over it, my cursor changes from sort of this white plus to this dark plus. If I click, I can drag this around and it'll just move the formula down like this. And so now I've told it I want you to copy and paste the formula all the way down. It sort of recognizes the pattern that you have and tries to continue it down. I'm going to undo it because another way that you could do this instead of copy and drag is to double click. And if I double click, it tries to match what it thinks I want to apply the formula to. And so you can see there, it didn't think for some reason that I wanted to have this final number here, but if I wanted to, I could always just also drag it down. In general, the double click I find works very well. At this point, we've seen a little bit about how to use Excel, and we've also generated a table here where we have the numbers that we will need in order to make a pie chart or a divided bar chart, which is the next few things that we're going to do. And I'll see you there where we'll continue to work up this data.